Not there yet.
Mhm.
Give us a second until we get everyone settled.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
You want me to be the stopwatch? I can be the stopwatch if you want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll restart. Kerry, thank you for your patience. And to everyone else who's online, thank you again for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Morena. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I want to speak about the stormwater at Whangamata. And I presume I'm speaking to the right group. I don't have a lot of practice at this sort of stuff. Yes, this is where I should speak.
So,
Good.
Kerry,
Okay.
what you're doing now is you're speaking to the Thames-Coromandel District Councillors as
Yes.
part of the annual plan hearings. So, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So my interest in this is because we have a house that is on the South Beach, and in particular, this house is threatened by the stormwater washing out the front dune, and there's quite a history to it. The front dune was initially significantly weakened in the 1970s by the council removing quite a few hundred tons of sand off the dune, and I'm not sure why that was done. And a thin remnant was left fronting the sea, to my father's distress. You know, we're going back a long time. He's dead now. So the dune was left significantly smaller and weaker, barely maybe a metre and a half at the front, which over the years people have used to walk dogs and take a shortcut to the beach, and it's generally been quite a lot of damage since that happened. We approached the council several times for signs saying, please keep off the dunes. And I've personally, with my bucket and spade, restored a lot of the dune by hand, particularly after the Christmas break, when the dune's been left badly damaged. And of course, it's been planted over the years by the Dune Restoration Society. And what's happened is the council has used the reserve behind as a stormwater drain. And the stormwater, of course, in recent years has been increasing in volume to the point now where the front dune is washed away in significant parts of the area. And so now what we've got is thousands of dollars on bulldozers to push some sand back in the way, which is going to be completely a waste of time. It's happened a couple of times now. It's washed away. And probably a few $100s worth of signs, but anyway, too late for that now. This is going to cost a lot of money to fix. The stormwater is going to have to go elsewhere. This reserve, as I understand a reserve, is for the benefit of the people of Whangamata, and I don't know that using it as a cheap stormwater option is really in the spirit of what a reserve should be. The reserve was precious because it was one of the few remnant pieces of untouched dune shrub or bush area down on the flat. And since the council has mowed big parts of it and encroaches increasingly with the mower on the shrub and shrubberies, the building of a park for kids and massive car parks with asphalt and inadequate drainage. So we've got water from all directions.
You have 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
It is not acceptable to blame the sea because this is not the sea's problem. So the stormwater, there are some photos. There's a photo showing the dune before the initial destruction in the 70s. And there are photos of the flooding that's happened since and the danger of that flooding if kids slide down the banks and into the water. and the need to backfill and restore that whole area and remove the stormwater drainage to a more appropriate site. So I think there's two big issues here. Your engineering advice has been very bad, and I don't know who your stormwater engineers are for this area, but you need a new set. The neighbours and I have been commenting to the council about this for many years and been told, oh, this is a 100-year event. We know with global warming that there's going to be increasing rain and increasing dries. So I'm not sure where your stormwater engineers are trained or come from, but they need some re-education or new ones. And that need to budget to set aside money for the repairs. And I'm done. Thank you for the chance.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Any questions?
Short, but I'm aware that there might be a couple of questions arising out of what you've just said. So we'll start with Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry. Yes, you'll be aware or may not be aware that there is a stormwater working group working with council and engineers and consultants on it. So we'll certainly engage with the community and tell you what's going on, just to clarify that for you, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I hear money being spoken of a lot at this meeting, and I cannot see how this is going to be cheap. I don't know if there's any other sources of money you can find, but I accept that rates are going to go up a whole lot to have to pay for this, because a lot of Whangamata's been flooded, and there's just been a whole lot of shortcutting over the years that we're going to have to pay for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. Bye.
Now we've got Kim Mousey. Are you on the line, Kim? You hear us, Kim? Just unmute. There she goes. Okay. No, you mute it again. Try again. There we go. Talk to us, Kim.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Kim, sorry, before you go ahead, it's very low volume. We're going to try and see if we can raise your volume at this end. Try again, please.
Okay, and I've tried to raise mine as well. Is that better?
Not really. See if you can get closer to your laptop and use the microphone there. Thank you.
I'm just about as close as I can get. Oh my.
Okay. We'll try that.
Okay.
Try that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. This highlights a very key point in our longing to be included as a district library. So I've had to come down to the TCDC building because I don't have good internet connection at my home. I've been very happy to wait here since 9:45 because it takes me 2 hours round trip to come to Thames, and longer now the roads are busier. But as a community library, we have functioned independently with a grant from the Community Board since 1980. And we've worked through a legacy left to us by Dr. Deirdre Airy. But we have come to the end of that funding now, and we are seriously in danger of breaching our funding agreement with TCDC because we will run out of funding in February instead of July 2024. We last year applied for funding from various other sources to significantly upgrade our building, which belongs to you. And we now have a professional space for our employed librarian to work in. But we are facing the reality that we don't have funding to actually pay him after February. We are attending other sources of funding, but they don't actually like to pay people's wages. So it's a bit challenging. So we're just making a plea that we can come in under the umbrella of the council as a district library. We are running out of people, I mean, you know, I'm an elderly person, and so is the rest of our executive committee. We have faced increasing pressure from incorporated societies to continue to strengthen the way we run it. So we've rewritten our constitution. We have to have job descriptions for our members, and it is just becoming almost too hard to keep providing such a wonderful service to our nearly 5 million. Are there any questions?
Kim, thank you. Yeah, we are struggling a little bit with sound, but we can hear you so long as everyone is very quiet and doesn't breathe. I have a question from Robin.
Hi, Kim. Would two questions. Would being under our umbrella enable longer opening hours for you?
We are very willing to work with what makes sense. The hours we work now are where we see our community most using. It would be pointless up here to have open doors and nobody coming in. So let's negotiate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kim? Kim, thank you. We've got a copy of your letter here and your submission, which is really helpful. There's been some discussion already today around Coromandel Library becoming part of the district network, and this is something that I think will be ongoing. Thank you. No further questions? All right, thank you, Kim. Much appreciated. Okay, and June, Bennett, June, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line.
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for your patience.
It's quite all right. Thank you for your opportunity to speak. You got it?
You managed to snaffle the whole Movement Bay Community Board rooms.
Oh, yeah.
Who approves that? All right,
Have I got there? Oh, right, I can see you now. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The proposed rates increase. I'm really concerned about the cost of living, COVID-19, cyclones, road issues, people and businesses trying to survive, and low wage restricted incomes and interest rate increases. So I hope everybody's taking that one into account. Operational works program, shoreline management. I'm very concerned about this as far as the hard options for erosion, because the soft options are obviously not working properly. The groin in Flaxmore Bay is an example. It stood up to cyclones, but further around the rest of the foreshore it did not. So that's where I'm coming from on that one. Pay as you throw, mid-price proposal option 2. I propose number 1 because it's more benefit for permanent residents. Also, how are holiday homeowners going to cope with wheelie bins and be able to bring them in when they have gone home? Could be a problem. Wheelie bins are recyclable, blue bins are not. Older people coping with these on their own too have heavy bins to have to bring in. Right, proposed fees and charges, building consents, building inspection fees, no increase and put on hold. The rationale for this is the economic downturn and weather events having repercussions on small businesses, trades. I argue that council take all this one into account. Page 10, what are we changing? Stormwater, wastewater, water supply investigations. Imperative with strong growth, largely due to Whitianga waterways and hopper developments, bringing in more and excellent services, more land development, leading to an increase in population. Council's ongoing attention to infrastructure is imperative, as is an alternative water supply source eventually. I know we don't need one right this moment, Council, because of the water we've had. Attention to keep up with the infrastructure is important for all our areas, and with all the proposed changes to the RMA coming through eventually too. So I'm open for questions.
June, thank you. Any questions for June? Okay, we appreciate the time that you've taken to make that submission. Ongoing issues, obviously, and there'll be a lot more discussion going on. Thank you, June.
That's all right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Joanne Finnis from Tairua Ratepayers and Residents Association. Are you with us, Joanne?
Unsure if you can hear me though.
We can hear you now, loud and clear. Thank you, Joanne. Go ahead. Joanne, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I am speaking on behalf of Tairua residents and ratepayers, and have to thank the members of the committee and our association members for the help they've given me in putting the submission together. I trust I can take it as read, so I won't go over most of it. Firstly, though, I feel obliged to add weight to the voices of those affected by roading and accessibility on the Coromandel. We all know the problems that have surfaced, and we strongly support any timely resilient solutions to the many roading problems, but especially for State Highway 25A. We've submitted that there be no reduction in expenditure on stormwater management and maintenance. Considering it's stormwater that created the roading problems, it would be unwise to reduce spending. Good stormwater management works and has thankfully been evidenced in Tairua with the management of Graham's Creek flood area, the Ocean Beach Road curb and channeling, which we got half of last year, and the Graham's Creek Causeway. However, poorly designed and inadequately maintained stormwater drains contributed to the significant and damaging flooding down Manaia Road along the harbour and on our main street. We're fortunate that we didn't have any slash problems taking out our 2 one-lane bridges, but waves were lapping over Pepe Stream Bridge and the main street was essentially closed for some time due to flooding. Work must continue to improve the management of the water from storms. So we see that stormwater and roading infrastructure go together. The next most obvious point to reiterate here is the rates increase due to the changes in waste management. As far as I know, this level of increase was not signalled nor consulted on, and it's disappointing to hear that other people have picked up on that too. Well, it's encouraging that they have, but disappointing to hear that they think the same. This is a hot topic in Tairua. We have approximately 50% non-resident population. Many of them have called for the retention of blue bags, for an opt-in policy on the red bins in particular, and many of our residents use composting techniques. Those green bins won't be used by probably most people, certainly not non-residents. It does seem that this is not up for debate, and I'm a bit unsure if that's true. But if it isn't, we opt for the cheapest option for most people, which is option 3. And going forward, we'd like to suggest, with long-term thinking, that more consideration is given to a local solution, especially for green waste. Generally, it seems inevitable that costs will rise significantly in the future and they'll be painful. This may drive people away from the Coromandel. A shift in thinking is required, and I've heard that before today too. Please consider finding a way to maybe tap into significant resource in our local volunteers. You're right.
Sorry, you go ahead, Joanne.
There are many in town here who are willing and able to help with local projects. And it's so frustrating to not have funding come from council, but also to be prohibited from getting some of this work done ourselves. Many of our footpaths are in poor condition with uneven surfaces that cause trip hazards, and some footpaths are overgrown with vegetation. They have quite a high elderly population, especially down by the aged care facility. A lot of the footpaths are really difficult to navigate with walking frames. Another example where volunteers could contribute is our small reserves, which are poorly maintained. Our pest trees and weeds are taking over, and regular maintenance is always more economic than rectifying new. Finally, we request that genuine and thorough consultation for annual planning take place before the annual plan is drafted, especially for the coming LTP. Transparency around the OPEX and CAPEX lists would be really helpful, and we as an association are quite willing to contribute as best we can in going through those lists. Just need a little bit more information about things. One line is not really enough information for us. And that's it for today. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanne, so much. Questions for Joanne? Peter?
Joanne, the riddle here. You oppose the removal of library files. Why is that?
We feel that books may not be returned if there's no incentive to return them, and can't see the reasoning behind it, really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joanne?
I was just one, if I may, you mentioned top of page 311, proposed changes to solid waste collection proposed by the Ministry of the Environment have not yet been passed into law. Because what I've been hearing, people are saying they have been. But it appears you're saying they haven't been passed into law yet.
That's the information I had at the time of writing the submission. They have been passed into law, but they don't come into effect until 27 and 2030, I think it is. It just seems that a little bit preemptive, I suppose, to switch over to this change, especially because it's so expensive. Surely it can be deferred until the roads are reinstated at least.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Joanne.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions? Just also a comment that we really appreciate the depth and the detail in your submission. Much appreciated. Good work.
Oh, thank you, Len.
Thank you. Okay. So, Manimana, we've had from Long Crest.
Yeah. So through the chair, we are moving to Tainua Parliamentary Community Board Chair Warwick Brooks. This will be presented in the Whangamata area office.
Okay.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I am submitting on behalf of the Tainua Community Board. Under proposed rate increase, the Tainua Community Board acknowledged that this is a very challenging time for the district and the need for council to carefully consider the financial impact on our ratepayers. The Tainua Community Board opposes the 12.9% rate increase. Under the operational work program, the Tainua Community Board acknowledged the need to make changes to the operational works program included in the proposed 23-24 annual plan consultation document with the following comments. Under the discretionary and contestable grants, the Tainua Community Board supports the removal of the contestable grants for 1 year and increase the discretionary grant for 1 year to $28,000. Under the heading of stormwater, wastewater and water supply investigation fees, the Tainua Community Board supports a reduction in budget for stormwater, wastewater and water supply investigation fees. In respect to the investigation fees generally, whilst the Tainua Board acknowledges the need for fiscal restraint, they submit that where possible, investigation budget should remain in place. Retained earnings. The Tainua Community Board support the district retained earnings being reduced, but oppose local ward retained earnings being reduced. The underfunded depreciation. The Tainua Community Board supports the underfunded depreciation of $6.7 million for 1 year. We do not have a comment on the Poland Street upgrade, as we consider this, is the Thames Community Board decision. The Capital Works Program, the Mania Road Hub Library Extension being deferred to 24-25. The Tairua Parliamentary Community Board opposes the reduction of COPEX budget for the 23-24 year. The Parliamentary State Bowl renewal deferred to 24-34 LTP. The Tairua Parliamentary Community Board supports the deferral of the Parliamentary State Bowl renewal project of $492,000 to the 24-34 long-term plan. Under the pay issue throw, the Tairua Parliamentary Community Board considered the three options presented in the proposed 23-24 annual plan consultation document and supports the implementation of option 3. Fees and charges. The Tairua Parliamentary Community Board has no comment on the proposed fees and charges, except that the boat users be required to pay charges on the Parku and Pleasant Point boat ramps. The funds collected should be reinvested into boating and harbour facilities. That's our submission, sir.
Thank you, Warwick. Anything from you, Dave?
Doing the Wangatana.
I do the comment. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Any questions for Warwick? Peter?
Warwick, Peter Riddle here. What was the thinking behind the option 3 on the pay as you throw?
I guess the pay, user pay theory came in there. We've heard Joe talk about the composting bin. I agree with that. I can't see that working. You heard that we've got about half of our residents or ratepayers are non-resident. So we see the blue bags are a major problem. How you train anyone or get them to take their blue bags out to the transfer station when they leave town, that's a massive problem. They don't do it. They drive straight past the gate and off back home. So we would love the bins and use the pay. Okay.
Thanks, Warwick. Robin?
Hi, Warwick. I've asked this of another community board and I'm going to ask Dave as well so he can prepare his answer in advance. In regards to the community board, you support the removal of the contestable grants. That's not been universally agreed across all community boards. Is it, in your opinion, okay for the boards to be treated differently in that? So some retain the grants at 50% and some lose them entirely, if it's what the community board wants. Can we treat the community boards differently?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes, I'm asking you that question.
I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay,
We decided that was the way we should look at this. I think every community is different. They all have different problems. We all have the same major ones, but there is differences, and I guess that's geographical. We've all got aged concerned groups there, so that's what we decided on.
Okay, thank you.
Warwick, I have a question. You expressed some concerns about the food waste collection. You're aware that there is currently a food waste collection being run in the Whangamata area. It's a voluntary basis, and I think they've got about 500 bottles out there which are voluntarily filled by people. Do you see that as an indication of how people might get behind a food waste collection program?
As I said, half of our population is non-resident. They are certainly not going to do it. I see that. I mean, these bins, I see a health issue, but until we address our transfer station and the way that's operated, I honestly don't think I just can't see how it would operate and where it would be carted to, given our current roaming problems. I just don't see it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions?
Just one quick-
Yeah, one from Terry.
Yeah, Warwick, I just wanted to confirm around the stormwater and wastewater water supply investigations that the board supported a reduction in budget. Was that over those particular areas in the annual plan consultation that you were talking about there, not a stormwater budget across the whole region?
No, just like, I know it is district, correct?
Yes, but there was investigation fees that were cited to certain areas, certain projects. I'm just trying to get clarification around that discussion, that's all.
Well, there is concern, of course, everyone's got concerns. If we're looking at trying to cut costs somewhere, this is what came across our table, what was discussed.
Okay, thank you.
You were there.
I know, I was there.
Warwick. No other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move to Dave for Whangamata. Thank you.
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Whangamata Community Board. The proposed rate increase, the Community Board acknowledged that this is a challenging time for the district and the need for Council to carefully consider the financial impact on ratepayers. The Board strongly believes that the Council should be proactive in seeking external funding to offset ratepayers' costs in future annual plan and long-term plans. The Whangamata Community Board opposes the 11.8 rate increase. Operational Works Program. The Whangamata Community Board acknowledges the need to make changes to the Operational Works Program included in the proposed 23-24 annual plan consultation document with the following comments. Discretionary and contestable grants. The Whangamata Community Board opposes a 50% reduction in discretionary and contestable grants across the district. Stormwater, wastewater and water supply investigation fees. The Whangamata Community Board supports retaining the investigation fees for stormwater management and opposes any reduction in budget for key Whangamata stormwater related investigations. Retained earnings. The Whangamata Community Board supports the district retained earnings being reduced and opposes the local ward retained earnings being reduced. Underfunded depreciation. The Whangamata Community Board supports the underfunded depreciation for 1 year. The council overheads. The Whangamata Community Board supports a reduction in IT spend, some personnel benefits and several other overheads. Property maintenance. The Whangamata Community Board supports the reduction of the property maintenance and investigation budget by $400,000. Power New Zealand. The Whangamata Community Board supports the council do not apply for interest back into the fund for the 23-24 year. Economic development initiatives. The Whangamata Community Board supports the reduction of this budget of $65,000. Our Coromandel magazine. Whangamata Community Board supports removing the budget and not producing the magazine for the 23-24 year. Major event fund. The Whangamata Community Board opposes removing the $50,000 budget for the 23-24 year. Collins Street upgrade. Whangamata Community Board supports to defer this. District funded projects. Stormwater, wastewater and water supply. Whangamata Community Board opposes reduction in stormwater, wastewater and water supply renewals by 25%. Totara Valley Road service extension. Whangamata Community Board opposes the Totara Valley Road service extension and this project should be deferred for 1 year. Matarangi treatment plant upgrade. The Whangamata Community Board supports the deferring of the Matarangi treatment plant upgrade for 1 year. Whitianga stormwater network improvements. Whangamata Community Board supports the Whitianga stormwater network improvement. Whangamata stormwater improvements. Whangamata Community Board supports keeping the original budget and the Whangamata stormwater improvement budget with no deferral to the 24 and 25 year To support this, I have gone through the attendance for fens to drainage or to flooding incidents. The Wangmata Fire has attended to 52 roads over the period from March 05 through till present time. The worst areas are Casement Road, 22 incidents, Hetherington Road 19, Port Road 12, Ocean Road 12, Chartwell 11. These incidents have become more relevant as time has come on, and there are genuine concerns for the stormwater damage that's been done to our zones. The Wangmata Nib construction, Wangmata Community Board opposes the deferral of $685,183 and support it being included in the Wangmata Stormwater Improvement Project. Boardwalk extension June section. The Wangmata Community Board supports the deferral of CAPEX budget for the 23-24 year and the remainder being deferred to the 24-25 year. Pay as you throw.
Dave, almost out of time, mate. I know you're nearly at the end, but almost out of time.
Wangmata oppose the solid waste project process, but have considered 3 options and prefer option 3. The Wangmata Community Board recommends that local contractors engage in local community with the view to set up a recovery centre for food waste and materials. And finally, the fees for the Wangmata Community Board consider the proposed fees and charges for the following comment. All fees should be free hireage for all community groups for 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Questions? I have one. Retained earnings. The Wangmata Community Board support the district retained earnings being reduced and oppose the local board retained earnings being reduced. You're not retained?
Local retained, not reduced.
So oppose the local board retained earnings being reduced. So support the district retained earnings being reduced, but oppose the local board retained earnings being reduced.
That is correct.
The district might be a bit grumpy about that, Dave.
They will, but that's what was voted for, sir.
Thank you. Peter.
Dave, can I just ask how many community groups would be impacted by having no haul charge for 12 months? If there was no, if you often just using free haul haulage, how many groups would that impact?
There would be approximately 5 or 6 groups, I think, that would be affected over that time, that are voluntary ones. Some of them have got very limited, and you'll hear from other submissions, very limited amount of people attending, and they can't cover the cost of the hireage for a morning for some of their activities that they run.
Thank you.
Martin had his hand up first, and then me.
Also just another question around that haul hireage. So if it was free for community groups, would that then become an additional local rates fee to pay for that?
I don't see that it would, because, I mean, if the hall is laying idle, nothing is happening, and the cost that would be incurred for a half a day or so's hireage would be so limited, I don't see that it's going to make much impact on rates.
Thanks, Dave. Robin.
So Dave, you've asked, the community board opposes a 56% reduction of discretionary contestable grants. Do you want to keep your grants at 100%?
We want to keep it as it was this year at $30,000 and not go below that. For the amount of voluntary organisations that we have, we're very limited. We don't have large companies, car sales and people like that can support our local community. So the only money that a lot of these people get for different groups, scouts groups, etc., is what comes through our community ones. So it is important that we can support them.
Okay, and as a supplementary question, and you might not know this offhand, and you can get back to me if you like. The community board, have any of the grants in the past been used to fund hall hireage? Because I know that in the Thames community and Thames Community Board grants, we've often funded people to use our halls as part of that funding. And so I'm just sort of wondering if we're then going to double dip in terms of you keeping 100% of your grants and then not, because you're not funding the people who are then getting the grants and they're giving that to them for free. So I'm just sort of wondering where the line is there in terms of, is that something you fund in your grants traditionally, and are you then giving, $2 to the cherry to each community group?
There's probably only 2 community groups that I can think of at this time that we actually support with funding through the grants, and the rest of the grants go to independent. But for the hall usage, there's probably only 2, I think, that we support.
Okay, thank you.
John.
Can you just talk a little bit about the major event fund and the impact that you would see the removal of that budget having in your area?
One of the main things that we're looking at doing is having a function at Christmas, a family function. And we have got 2 different offers that are being investigated at present for that. But we have always given money for that fund in relation to supporting those groups, and in particular to have a safe area which we pay ambulance and security for, to ensure that young people that become inebriated can be dealt with properly pending their exit to Thames Hospital.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? Thank you, Dave. Well done. A lot of work gone into that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Gail Gilbertson. Gail, are you with us?
I am.
There she is. Wait.
I wanted to speak about the Whangamata Memorial Hall being used by non-profit making groups for no charge, and Dave has mentioned that in his submission. The groups that I'm representing are Indoor Bowls, Pickleball, the Art Group, the Theatre Group, Spinners and Weavers, Busy Fingers, and also Whangamata ratepayers. They would all appreciate use of the hall, and because they're non-profit groups, we would like it for no charge. All the groups that use the hall are senior citizens, basically, and they all are volunteers or have been volunteers in many areas in Whangamata. I had taken this to the community board, and I did mention that, we would be happy to do something in return, as in a bit of gardening around the hall, just to keep it tidy. And I also have as you've heard, the support of our community board and also our councillors. And it's not just for 12 months, it's for ever and ever. Amen. My other areas in my submission are stormwater, the plans. We need to have that money remaining in this area for Whangamata in view of recent activities. And there's several areas I thought could be reduced. Furniture and fittings were in, that could probably be left out. The Whangamata boardwalk, my opinion is that could be cancelled entirely. I haven't found anybody who is supportive of it. The universal water metering, I thought that had already been covered with a government department funding. The Matarangi land purchase, I'm sure that could be deferred. And the district vehicle replacements could be cut down on. And then all that money could be diverted to the Whangamata Memorial Hall. Any questions?
God loves the trial. So just from me, you are aware that the Margaret land purchase is completely off the table now, so that's no longer. So rest assured on it. Any questions? Robin?
Yes, hi Gail. Just thinking about your hall usage, because I'm aware that you do have people who use the hall and pay a rate. If you were using the hall for free and there was an expo or a theatre production that was going to use the hall for a whole week or for an extended period of time, would you be willing to give up your booking for a commercial booking?
Oh, we get chucked out now, so that doesn't change anything. Yep.
Any other questions?
So just a point of clarification too. I think if the contestable funds did stay, I don't think there'd be issue around hall hireage because they would apply through the wall. So I hear it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Much appreciated. Okay. Is Amanda Stevenson on the line? Are you there, Amanda?
Looks like he is.
You hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I've been a resident for 3 years, permanent, in Wangwata. My history goes back. I was brought up down here with my parents having a house down here in Batch. I started this interest in this year when we live in Hunt Road, and at the end of the road there's access 4. There's some beautiful big picnic seats there, and there's 3 of them, and they all describe seat 1, sea and surf, seat 2, dynamic dunes, seat 3. It's all about the history of Wangwata. You can't read a thing. It's run down. There's holes in seat 1 where a kid's foot could go through. So this year I started to think, shit, where do our rates go? I pay $5,500 worth of rates. And I'm thinking, gosh, you'd think you'd be proactive and there'd be a maintenance, budget or something before you even start, like a boardwalk or whatever you do, that your assets that are existing, whether it's stormwater or issues, that you would actually tidy up all your assets that you have and be proactive before you go and start new projects. I don't understand much of your process, but at the end of the day, it concerns me that I am spending money that really is not getting spent in the area, and that I see things like this. I've got quotes here off your website that stunning kaleidoscope of beaches, Wangwata area. Tourism is one of the main sources of industry and the most significant employer in the community. Tourism, we have camper vans down access 4 and all accesses, and yet you've got assets that have got holes in them, need painting, they look about 100 years old. And, at the end of the day, where's our rates going? So I started to ask that question, and I started asking other people in the question area, do you know where your rates go? And then we started, apparently there's $20 million plus of rates collected in this area. And we're seeing rundown assets. The beach is not even cleaned. It's got debris all over it. At the end of the day, I just don't understand what you're doing with our money. I couldn't even find out how much money's been spent in the area, and yet alone hear that it's been spent in other areas, and it's because you've got to apply for a project or something or other. Sorry, I'm very green to all this, but I'm reading your documents on your website. I researched quite a few places. The long-term plan, let's have a look at that. That's number 1. Look at this long-term plan here. It says that you report on statistics here of employment, population, fantastic information, demographics of the area. Where does it say, where do our rates go? How much do you collect and where do they go? When I'm seeing rundown assets not even maintained in the area, I've been here since I was a kid. This place is disgraceful. at the end of the day, we spend a lot of money. Our ratepayers here, we have some expensive assets in this area, and we expect capital gain, depending on the market, the housing market. But at the end of the day, the place is getting run down. The tourists are coming and thinking, God, look at the state of this place. You can't even fix the assets you've got. And you're talking about putting a new boardwalk in. I mean,
1 minute, Amanda.
now we asked at the AGM, and I've been going to the Whangamata Ratepayers Association AGM. I asked and stood up, where's our rates? How much rates do you collect? No one knows. Mr. Len Salt, you said that that should be more transparent. I agree. I've read through your websites. I've got all these quotes here, how you work with the community. You want to work with us and get us all, you know, but actually I don't see any of that. We don't even know what you're spending in the area. And it's absolutely a Thames swimming pool. Who gives a shit when you're living in Whangamata? We don't use that. At the end of the day, we're not a big city, we're different communities, and you've identified that. You've identified you want to work with the community and get consultation and all this stuff, but you can't even look after your own assets that you put in. These people are here.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We understand that you're passionate about it.
It's disgraceful, and we're paying your wages.
Thank you, Amanda.
So what was her role? Is she the chair of the ratepayers?
No, she's not. No, she's just a member of the.
I just didn't. Okay, thank you.
Member.
So
I just didn't catch whether she said at the beginning.
asked if there was any.
Sorry about that. Oh, calm down. Sorry.
Deep breath. Any questions of Amanda?
Amanda. John Morrissey here. Hey, listen, I'll phrase this as a question, okay? Were you aware, Amanda, that this council in 2009 put a wastewater plant in Whangamata, paid by the district as a whole, so that your town had a great sewage system? And that was a cost, I think there were three of them done at that stage, for about $120 million. So I'm just asking if you were aware that things like that have happened in the past.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the area it is now. You sit there and say, you know, you spent this, you spent that a long time ago, but what are you doing now?
It's not that long ago.
At the end of the day, if you look at the rates that Whangamata's producing and the ward, we're actually contributing a lot of rates.
Yeah. Okay.
20 million rates.
Were you aware that you do contribute a lot of rates, but this district also put a lot of its rates back in Coromandel, Thames, Whitianga, into the Whangamata area? Just asking if you were aware of that.
Well, so I tell you what, why don't you produce the information then, and why do you hide it? We don't even know what you're collecting, and we don't know where you're spending it.
Okay.
So why don't you produce that information for us so we don't have to talk like we are?
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. We'll move on. Rob, are you in the room as well? Robert, I just want you to be aware I know where you live, mate. So
I just have to say Amanda's joined our ratepayers organisation, and she certainly livens things up. It's good to have her along. She's great value and lots of energy. I'm just going to really talk, if I can. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. About the Whangamata Ratepayers Association submission. This submission is on behalf of the residents and ratepayers and request that TCDC consider the points that we set out in our 2023-24 annual plan, whilst taking into consideration the infrastructure strategies laid out in the 2021-31 long-term plan. And I just refer to a couple of principles. Page 191, making the best use of our existing infrastructure, ensuring the good stewardship and investments that we have already made. Council values on page 120, financially responsible with ratepayer money, integrity, transparency, accountable in our actions, working with and having meaningful relationships with both resident and non-resident communities. Management approach, page 129, regular programmed and prudent maintenance, cost-effective program renewals whilst maintaining service levels and managing risk, maintenance and renewal programs based on quality information. At the public meeting on the 9th of April, 140 residents and ratepayers voted unanimously to the 7 points requesting a strong immediate action on the following to TCDC. Number 1, review the existing stormwater infrastructure to reduce flooding and, more importantly, to stop the long-term surface ponding. We expect new infrastructure and a rigorous maintenance program that is kept up to date. TCDC to engage with our working group, and we're very pleased to report that we've met once with the TCDC officials, and we're meeting tomorrow with the working group and independent engineers and council officials to start making some decisions on where we need to move going forward. Number 2.
Can I just interrupt you just for a second? And I know that you've got a lot of things to cover. You've got 2.5 minutes left, so I just want to make you aware. You might just want to. You've got the important points there, and I'm eating at you. But just you might just want to summarise those before we run out of time.
I won't go through the 7, but there is one I do want to talk about, and that's number 3. In partnership with key stakeholders, we need to provide a long-term solution to Williamson Park Golf Course to create a resilient drainage system, and that's just come onto the table in the last 2 or 3 days. So we are going to work with key people to try and resolve that. I'll come to the key point. It's the final one, number 7. And this is to engage directly with the regional council to this is the Waikato Regional Council, to urgently review and investigate the adverse environmental conditions and effects affecting the Wentworth River, Moana Anu Estuary and Harbour, to allow the river to flow, which will self-discharge build-up of washed-down silt that's resulted in contamination, the stormwater discharges, mangroves and other inhabitation that are detrimental to the estuary. The rising level of the riverbed is contributing to the floodwater problems that we're having in that part of town, the golf course, low-lying land, and the Wentworth River and Harbour. That environment is a priceless environment. It's slowly being choked, polluted, and is in danger of becoming a wasteland. So finally, the current annual planning Whangamata stormwater budget for the next 3 years was 1.6 million or thereabouts. 2023-24, it's 2.2. It's proposed that it goes to 1.1. We find that totally unacceptable, and obviously with the ratepayers and the residents suffering from the recent flooding, and some of the stories are horrific, our town clearly needs not only a full amount, but considerably more if we're going to get on top of the stormwater issues. Thank you very much.
Rob, thank you. Can I just put a clarification? The golf course, is it the 18 hole or the 9 hole that you referred to in that point?
Sorry, I missed that, Len. 9 hole.
That's the 9 hole course. Isn't it? Point number 3?
Oh, yes, the 9 hole course, yeah.
9 hole. Thank you. Thank you. Robin.
Oh, hi, Rob. Just thinking about your, wanting us to engage directly with the Waikato Regional Council, is the Whangamata Ratepayers Association, as an entity with an interest in the area, also engaging directly with your representative on that council? Like, I'm just thinking, can you cut out the middleman?
Yes. We came across the condition of the estuary whilst we were doing the investigation with the working group, looking at the infrastructure of the town. And I hadn't been, other than the dark side, which is on the causeway side where the mangroves are, I hadn't been up towards the bridge end at the Moana Anu part of the estuary since the floods really early in the year. But when we went and stood on Hampden Road, there was somewhat people property there. We stood on the road and we looked across at the silt and the damage and the environmental damage that's been done. The ratepayers decided that this was something that For years, we've been talking about mangroves and getting that estuary cleaned up, and nothing's happening despite strenuous efforts. I believe they are making progress, but I think that this goes beyond ratepayers. It's TCDC talking to the regional council in Waikato and getting it sorted, because I believe that the Waikato Regional Council are responsible for those areas.
Okay, so no, thank you.
No.
Any other questions of Rob? Stay there for a second. Any other questions of Rob?
Well, Rob's on it anyway. Rob's the next speaker. Yeah, flip over the page.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on Rob in his ratepayers capacity? There being none, we'll move straight to Rob in his personal capacity.
Are you going to do my personal one?
Yes, you're next.
Oh, right.
You want to stay there and go ahead? Yep.
Hang on, let me find it. Just following on really from the proposed rates increases, ratepayers are not impressed at all at the moment. Regarding the increase, there's just a call for transparency is growing. Local residents and resident ratepayers just need to know in simple terms where their rates are spent in administration, government services, infrastructure at district and low level, and the percentage that comes back to the ward. And I fully appreciate the comment that was made there. One of the things I was going to say is that council does not do a good job of reminding ratepayers of what they've received in dollar terms and actually in infrastructure. For example, I wasn't here when the wastewater or the stormwater upgrade was done. And there's countless number of people in town that really don't know what's being done. They just see this steady stream of money going out, and some kind of reporting as to the projects that have taken place at district level and at local level, I think would be really beneficial to help people understand what they do get for their rates. Just going to go back again to the programming maintenance and prudent maintenance, cost-effective program renewals while maintaining service levels and managing risk. And this all comes back to the stormwater situation we find ourselves now. Part of the working group's task was to go around and inspect the stormwater services in town, and it was really quite pitiful to see the conditions. Constant flooding, constant backup of water, and it just needed, in most cases, it just needed the sumps cleaning out. And that surely is just part of a regular maintenance cyclic program. First time I've ever seen a truck in town cleaning out stumps was last week, and it immediately made a difference to that part of town, almost within hours. So we just need to see more of that. Whether there is a cyclic maintenance program, I'm not sure. The curb and channel, we've just had some curb and channeling done in Rutherford Road, but the recent curb and channel that was done in Kiwi Road has been a disaster. The residents in that street have been flooded, they're getting inundation, they're getting pooling. Several houses just totally not uninhabitable, but you can't live life in them. And that's all since that curb and channel went in. I think the curb and channel needs to be reassessed until we get the stormwater situation under control. Just briefly on bins, I think we're going to have trouble with the recycling bins. I think because they're you pay to empty them, you're going to get a lot of fly tipping. I'm not sure how people are going to get 4 bins in and out of their properties. I know we're going to struggle to do that. We only have a small property. I'm really worried that people who are on holiday and out-of-town residents leave their bin on the street, and they'll be on the street for maybe 2 or 3 weeks unless somebody will arrange to take them in. Those bins will get nicked. They're a valuable commodity. I think there should be definitely an opt-in, opt-out option for the food bins. The system that works in Whangamata that Helen McCabe's running is fantastic. It's very quietly, very efficiently done. I don't know what people who only live maybe 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks of the year are going to do with their bin. Having 4 receptacles, I think, is just going to be too much for elderly people. I think they're going to struggle. I just want to comment, if I can, on the roading. I think State Highway 25A, after years of neglect at national and local level, let's patch up and hope methodology of managing the roads is disgraceful. And Waka Kohati and NZTA, it's disgraceful that they're unable to come up with a plan to open that road before the end of the year. You know, I come across lots of people, you know, at my age, and it's hard to describe the anger and frustration whose lives have been thrown into some sort of disarray. For many, it's real hardship, physical hardship, mental hardship, emotional, financial well-being. You know, they've got to get to Thames, they've got to get to Hamilton. I met a guy at the dentist the other day. He came from Whitianga. It took him 2 hours to get to the dentist. I think it's just disgraceful, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And I know that you guys are working hard, and I don't know how you work hard, and I don't know how you get it resolved, but I think that road for me is like the M62 in London. You know, we need that road open. And some people, I think we're going to see them leave the area because they need to live normal lives, and you can't do that if you need medical and treatment and so on. So thank you for that. Quite quick.
Thank you, Rob. Questions for Rob? There being none, Will, thank you again. I really appreciate your time. We'll move straight to David Nicholson. Online, Dave, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the opportunity to attend and present to your worship and other councillors. I just wanted to put my personal support in behind particularly the stormwater issues that have been raised by the Whangamata Ratepayers Association. I wanted to just address 2 points and keep it pretty simple. I think an average rate rise of 11.8% on what is existing a high level of rates anyway, compared to the level of services we receive as Whangamata residents, is pretty steep. The consumer price index to December was 7.22%. We should be looking to keep more in line with that level of increase. I can support this level of increase if we receive better stormwater water infrastructure in Whangamata. I therefore oppose any reduction in the Whangamata stormwater budget over the next 3 years, and I'd like to raise the plight of Sylvia Road residents between Aitken Road and Williamson Road, where water has pooled for about 4 months this year, and it pools consistently for small amounts of rainfall, even 25 mils. I think something desperately needs to be done. I don't think the stormwater solution that council supports in building consents is a viable one, because many of those tanks that we empty our stormwater into are below the groundwater level anyway. So I'll support a rate increase if we get better services at Sylvia Road. It's very, very not in my backyard submission, but I think it's really important that the health and safety issues of the pooling water on the roadside are brought to your attention. I have small grandchildren who visit me regularly. I can't always keep them on the property. It's a danger that they could even be drowned in some of those pondings. That's how bad it has been this year. Thank you for the opportunity to submit.
So don't go away, David. We'll just see if there's any questions. Any questions from the councillors? Martin?
Yes, good morning, Dave. So the 3 Thames councillors went on a bit of a tour over that side recently. So I just wanted to try to clarify. So in the Sylvia Road, is that where there's been, back in the day, there were like soak pit type drainage put in?
I'm not familiar with the history. I've only been there for 5 years, but there's been consistent flooding with rainfall over those 5 years in Sylvia Road. I don't know what I've recently built a new home there. It has 10 underground soak pits. The water simply boils up through them and flows into the street. There needs to be some sort of street drainage, and residents along that block of the street are digging holes and pumping water into the next door neighbour's place with no viable way of getting rid of that water.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. David, are you aware that the council is doing some work at putting together a stormwater working group in Whangamata?
I wasn't aware of that, but that's a good thing.
So that's just to let you know that's ongoing. It's something that we are working on. We've got a bit ahead of us, but we are working on that. Thank you. Any other questions for David? There being none, we'll move to, thank you, David. We'll move to John Spencer. Can you hear us, John? Right, can you hear us, John? You okay?
You're on mute.
He's there.
Nope, Kelly's there.
Kelly's sorting out.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, John.
Okay.
Go ahead. As a resident in North Matapa for 45 years and a retired professional engineer, I know there's been an awful lot said, and you've said this morning about the review that's going to go on about the stormwater system around in Whangamata, which is very pleased to hear. I'm part member of that group, so we won't dwell on that. That's going to proceed, and hopefully we'll come to some resolution. It has been 3 years ago now, at the request of the Ratepayers Association, of which I was a member, I was asked to investigate with Andrew Thrush, a services engineer from TCDC, as to water supply and stormwater situation at that time. I did request from Andrew the reasoning and the function of the pond, as we call it, in Williamson Pond, Williamson Park. I never heard anything from that. My particular submission is concentrated solely on that pond. I've been involved with these things around the country, and I just cannot understand the reasoning for its function. And I did ask for that to be explained so that we can get some benefit from it. In simple terms, the pond appears to be retained as an excess stormwater collection point for the outfall of street stormwater disposal, and yet the levels are being maintained under normal circumstances have the effect of charging all the inlet pipes to the pond at their fullest capacity. This clearly prohibits the free passage of excess rainfall disposal from street drainage in times of need. And that was demonstrated in the recent heavy rains that we've had over the last month. It has been pointed out in earlier Opus engineering reports, which you have, and I've read, March 2017, that such a drainage pond facility must not be used as a water feature. It appears that this is exactly what it's set up to be. If you go down there today, the water level is right up to the top level. It's of the grass. And also in my past life, I was a water fitness inspector for the Hamilton City Council, and it concerns me that the dangerous facility you have there, it's about 10 metres or 15 metres away from a barbecue area where children can get into it. I know it's not a swimming pool. It's not coming under the Swimming Pool Fencing Act, but it is a responsibility of the local authorities. I would suggest to you that the simplest thing you can do is to build or plant a hedge around it, so that at least it's a barrier for small children to be put in a safer position. Now, I've given you some sketches, a very simple hand sketch of a proposal that I think would work, and I would suggest that you're doing a review. This is coming up, that your engineers consider that as an option. The very simple thing is that this two-stage drainage option will allow a continuous runoff and reduce the water table, at least to the level of the lower outlet pipes. this adjustment is not such an expensive option when we consider the alternatives in today's cost constraints. The present practice of pumping water out of the pond over the stock bank and then onto the open beach is fruitless and expensive. The photographs which I think you've been supplied with just show us what was going on the 18th of February.
You have 1 minute, John.
Okay, all of that cost this community money. There was noise going on 24 hours a day from the pumps, which annoyed the residents. So my final point, lowering the top level of the weir as at present would only result in greater scarring. There's a suggestion that they lower the top level of the weir, which in storm conditions I can say is going to have uncontrolled rush of water onto the beach, which will cause more scarring. So that's not an option. So finally, I'm just asking, please review the function of that pool. I've tried to establish where the consents and the permit allowances and details were established, but I cannot find them. So I leave that with you, sir. And I think that is one small measure which could improve lower the water table in that particular area. So I'll leave it at that. The notes are there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Much appreciated. Gary, you have a question?
John, can I ask a question? Having talked to locals who've been there since the 60s, there used to be no pond. The water used to just run over the field. And you've been able to work out how the pond developed. Who decided there should be a pond?
Well, I don't know who decided that design, but I've worked on designs where there has been a proper bath, if you call it, or a huge pool constructed with a lid over the top of it and an excess area gardened on the top of it to provide a storage for excess stormwater, purely and simply. At the moment, it looks lovely today. The water's up at the grass level, but it is, and then you see in these photographs, we get some extra rain and we have to resort to pumping to lower the water table and get rid of excess water. It's a nonsense.
Well, if you can look at that second photograph, it's actually the pumping and the water coming out has actually destroyed the beach for the people.
Well, I'm saying that, Gary, that the pipes on that sketch, at a lower level will be under less pressure, and it will be a continuous filtering of stormwater which is entering the street drainage system. The top level weir will always be there in a case of excess rains or storm, and so you'll have a two-level system. I believe that will, as I said in the notes, lower the whole of the water table in that area.
John, thank you. You've sent us some detailed drawings, which we really appreciate.
You have two 1.2 metre diameter pipes feeding into that. They are at the moment full of water. If it rains, the rain just cannot, it takes hours to get to the lower level to dissipate onto the ocean.
Thank you, John.
It's not working.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Any other questions for John? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Got Linda Daisy. Welcome, Linda.
Welcome. Are you ready?
We're ready for you. Go ahead.
Our stormwater system is currently in dreadful shape. We need that 2.1 million to fund improvements. Other submitters have spoken at length on this today, so I'm going to move directly to the Dunes Boardwalk part of my submission. Despite opposition in 2021, 1.2 million was allocated allocated to this project spread over the next 2 financial years. That was then, but it is hard to believe that council would choose to persevere with this project on our North Beach dunes, which are currently unspoiled, in today's world, particularly on Crown land, and of course against your own coastal scientists' advice and the SNP. You only need to look at our South Beach to see how council's activity and structural interference with the dune system there has reduced those dunes to the tragic condition they are in today. The same is true in the Esplanade Williamson Park area. Maintenance and recovery costs in that dune area are high and required after every storm. This is not new, it's been ongoing for years. In Whangamata, year after year, our community board asks for rollover deferral of various allocated funding on a publicly stated basis that they don't want Whangamata to lose the money. While that sentiment may be admirable and in some cases is justifiable, in the case of the Dunes Boardwalk, little consideration has been given as to whether the project underpinning that money is viable now or in the future. CapEx plans being made today, I mean now, need to be realistic, not just an ongoing rollover of old ideas. We have to adapt to the new conditions facing us. Coastal erosion is already a current problem, and the impacts of climate change are only going to become more of a challenge in the coming years. We have to acknowledge these issues. I submit there should be no rollover of funding or deferral status into the next LTP granted to the Dunes Boardwalk project, as it carries, in addition to the 3 issues noted, several more risks which should be acknowledged by council and shared openly with the community. As for Annual Plan 23-24, no funding need be allocated. Retaining the current track along the dunes costs council nothing. It remains completely sustainable, is self-maintained by nature and provides access with no investment needed by council now or in the future. In the 23-24 annual plan, surely the overriding need is to fund much more important recovery programs, such as our roading and stormwater networks, bearing in mind too that these will take some years to complete. I submit that it is both prudent and justifiable to cancel the Dunes Boardwalk project now. It is council's duty to take a leadership position and act on what is known today. It is also important, in what are tough times for ratepayers, to see a demonstrated adherence to council's #1 value, being financially responsible with ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions? That's much appreciated. Thank you for your time. I'm going to apologise for pronunciation. Is it Jane Edwards? James. Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is pronounced like pain without the P, so I hope you don't remember me as Pain. I'm here on behalf of the Whangamata Theatre Society regarding the submission that we would like to see that the Whangamata Hall is made available free of charge to volunteer groups, especially as the community board grants have been slashed by 50%. I've written some notes which I hope will give you an appreciation of what we as a society incur through using the hall. As a group, we really would like it to be free of charge for us for things like auditions, rehearsals and setting up for a show. We're not asking that we don't pay when we have an audience coming along to a show, but we are asking that you consider that we have it free use for the pre-show stuff. In the case of the last 2 shows I directed, being Stepping Out and last year Whangamata's Got Talent, we incurred large costs prior to actually opening for paid performances. The time for auditions and for rehearsals were expensive. We currently rent space, which is not the hall, mainly because we need it on nights and in the weekend when other groups are there, but we would alter that if we could get it for nothing. We currently pay $40 a night for a rehearsal. We have 3 rehearsals a week, meaning that's $120. Depending on the play, it's either 3 months, but anything that I direct is normally 4 months. So the last show that I put on was in excess of 1,920 for rehearsal space before we got into the hall. As we don't own a theatre, we already rent space for our costumes through a local storage shed. When we are doing a show, we have to book the Memorial Hall out at least a week prior to being able to do a performance. This time is for building the set, bringing in and arranging costumes, setting up the technical side, as well as squeezing in dress rehearsals and tech rehearsals. And we work around other groups. We currently we've given up having a green room because the jiu-jitsu people use that. So we are actually already finding it quite difficult, but it's the facility that we choose to use. The build up to the actual performance season, when we have a public audience, means that we are paying a lot of money out, not only for the rehearsal, but also to council for the use of that hall. For example, we also pay $200 to have the bleachers set up. We have no problem with paying for the venue when we have a paying audience, but the cost prepaid performance cripple us. When we do a play, we have other costs such as royalty. So I've been writing the last 2 shows because normally you can have royalties from a couple of $100s to thousands. We also have to pay music rights to APRA, and our next show will have that. We've tried really hard to use lighting and projection in our last show to cut back on hiring the hall to build a big elaborate set. However, just our lighting bill can be anywhere between $5,000 and $6,000. So we have an awful lot of costs. The next show we're trying to work out how we can use scaffolding so that we have a much smaller time to build the set. In March this year, we bought a professional actor through Arts on Tour to follow Matar, and this brings us very little profit. It was about, and forgive me for telling you this, but you need to hear it so you understand where my point is. It was about a woman who discovers that her 3-year-old daughter isn't her biological daughter. And we picked to bring this play because it's our job as a theatre group to bring a diverse range of theatre to town. We as a theatre could not have produced that because we could not have got a big enough audience to come for at least 6 nights to pay all our outgoings. So we chose to bring in a professional theatre through Arts on Tour. We managed to fill the house to 172. And we seem to have looked like we made a lot of money. We actually paid 70% out to Arts on Tour. But
we're running out of time here. So
okay, that's fine. I just want to mention that we do put money back into the community. We donated $2,000 to the Cancer Society after Calendar Girls, $2,000 to Life Saving After Stepping Out, and we invested a lot of money into prize money last year. We do appreciate the support that we get. One thing I would like to comment after listening to other people and Mandy talking about repairs and maintenance is when we did hire the hall the last time, 6 bleachers were broken, which we had to repair. And also we had people complaining about being able to concentrate because of lack of air conditioning. I'm just poking that in there so that you know we don't mind paying, but we do want value for money when we do pay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, Ains, thanks for your report and submission. Is it a fully volunteer organisation you're running?
Yes, it is, but we are forced to pay for the likes of lighting and sound. So we have John Mack of a local business, and he does charge minimal, but it's still thousands and thousands of dollars. And we don't begrudge him because it's a cheaper way for us to, you know, to be able to do it. Yes, everyone is volunteers. Men's Shed often help us. Rob Boston, who was here before, he's sort of helped a lot, but we do have other costs that we have to outlay.
Thanks, we're going to keep you moving. We're really running behind time here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, I'm just going to address you momentarily. We've got 2 more presenters and then we're through. Yep. We are a bit behind time. Are you okay to just take it? Thank you. Appreciate your patience. Ollie, are you in, or are you online at home?
Through the chair, we've just been told that Ollie is emotional.
Okay. So Ollie is not with us. Ian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for your time. We've got 5 minutes, so I'm assuming, before you start, I'm assuming you're part of the Stormwater Working Group?
Up to speed with what, sorry?
Are you part of the Stormwater Working Group that's being put together?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ian.
Right, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, councillors and staff, thank you for allowing me to present verbally. I'm speaking as a citizen and a member of WRA. I've been here about 10 years. I reside at 103 Bologna. So I haven't got a lot of history behind me, like previous speakers. In my submission, I stated that I objected to this time constraint under Section 83, as I was still receiving information to support statements I made in my submission. I've received some of this, but at this stage, delays of information requests are still hampering my conclusions. What I've come up so far is that TCDC is responsible for the Stormwater Management Plan, or SMP. Since 1991, this has required TDC to introduce SMP into the LTP to meet RMA. Right. It is the Waikato Regional Council that authorises and approves the SMP. Documents released by Waikato Regional Council in April this year, just recently, show that TCD is still failing its regulated responsibilities. And I'm referring to Certificate 105667. As councillors and the Mayor, it would probably be good for you to read the 2021 refusal from WRC. So at the moment, the TCD has got no fully approved SMP at all. It is under what I understand to be administrative deficiencies. TCD. Yep.
Ian, can I just stop you just for a second? I think we need some clarity here. You're referring to SMP.
Yep, Stormwater Management Plan. Yep.
Referring to Stormwater Management Plan and not the
Not the what? Not the LQIP or the S.
We use the same terminology. I just wanted to clarify that people.
Okay. Yeah, generally there's an SMP, and under that there's monitoring systems and requirements. I'm still waiting all those. Right?
Unfortunately, we use the same.
Yeah, I'll get more familiar with it too shortly. So, TCD has failed to even supply the minimum requirements. TCD has continued with CapEx projects without advising WRC or meeting the requirements of its own Certificate 105667. Some of those projects are including things like enlarging pipes, building sediment ponds, emitting pipe connections, continuing with the soak pit concepts, none of which have remote chance of complying with WRC conditions in their 2021 requirements. There is a failure to satisfy the affected parties, which will be Environmental Waikato, Harbour Care, Dock, Coastal Care, property owners, visitors and residents that are entitled to the protections of the RMA. TCD is required under the terms of 10566 to report failures of the SMP together with corrective actions and improvements so they can comply with the SMP and demonstrate that they're doing that. Records show none of the 2017 stormwater effects were recorded or included in the yearly reports to Waikato Regional Council under 105667. What that means is we've got a complete deficiency of any knowledge of 217 or any actions that got taken in response to that by the council. If I'm wrong, it's only because information requests I'm seeking are being withheld from me. The WRC report 2021 states TCD has failed to file yearly reports since 2016. None exist before that, even though this goes back to 1991. I do not accept TCD lacks resources to complete this task. For instance, TCDC has a ratio of 1 to 78 staff to residents. Auckland has 1 to 148. That means TCDs can shed 226 staff, or at least dedicate one person to completing the SMP. TCD has time to discuss and implement 3 waters, yet there's no SMP to put towards it when it comes. TCD has spent around 12 million on computers and software in the last 10 years, which works out around 34,000 on an average staff rolling basis. Money can easily be diverted to CapEx and SMP programs. Coromandel is meant to be an environmental haven, yet TCD has spent and wasted valuable time and money on foodie waste bins and increasing waste collection costs. I understand 2 million has been allocated to foodie bins, yet 51% of the properties of absent owners visiting maybe 6 to 10 times a year. Most of the rest are permanent residents with compost bins to return nutrients to the soil. That's why we come to this country. Right? It's absolutely silly with too many heads at TCDC. Someone's going to go off on an invalid task of trying to meet Auckland's needs of condominium owners, rest homes, apartments, row upon row of developments without any yard to tolerate composters. I cannot reconcile how staff effort is wasted and misguided futility when important things like flooding go unabated. TCDC is preparing to spend 1 million on board work, not even on honest land. TCD is currently replacing its vehicle fleet right now. None of this provided the SMP. None of this stops the flooding. None of this stops the Moana silting up to a now toxic sludge dump. None of this stops polluted water being discharged in the surf beach without consent under 105667. None of this helps resilience against sea level inundation. None of this helps the surf club who need the money and assistance to retake the #1 surf beach title back and give us tourism back. None of this helps our business community prosper. None of this helps our #3 asset, the Williamson Golf Course, to lift itself out of the swamp the deficient SMP has caused. None of this was even reported to Waikato Regional Council in yearly reports. None of this proves Coromandel is actually really positively open for business. Open for business would mean tourists and the 51% non-residents back in the coast, but the reality lies in 1 minute.
David, we're out of time. Okay. And I'm out for the time that I spend interrupting you. So I factored that in. Thank you so much. And look, I'm aware that you've put a lot of work into this detailed submission and you're passionate about the area and the issues that involve the area. So thank you for your contribution. Are there any questions of Ian?
Just page 173, you raised something which I am still shaking my head over. Number 13, it appears that the decision has been already made and changes have been committed to implemented by September 2023. Is this true? I don't know. And thank you for raising that.
Yeah. I don't know the point again. I have to get the notes, sorry.
No, I thank you for raising to our attention that the solid waste, you say it appears the decision's already been made before we even finished consultation. And I think we, as councillors, we need to be aware of that you raised it.
Yes, I think it was a valid point because in the annual plan, there's about 6 or 7 supporting documents. One of them said that this is a significant spend and therefore we'll go to the community before we go approval. And when I read the annual plan, it says, which is your option? A, just pay for it as usual, or B, just pay for it anyway. So the decision's been made. We're just now negotiating how we're going to pay for it. That's not consultation. That's not consultation at all. You've just made the decision and telling us, well, now you're going to have to pay for it. Well, I don't want to pay for the 2 million. That's the end of it. Just cancel the bins and spend the 2 million doing something decent.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do have one, if I can ask, is that tomorrow we're meeting. Now, it's meant to be on good faith. That's what I'm hoping, because we're bringing our research that we've done. I don't get paid for this. TCDC stuff.
Is this about the working group?
Well, what I want to make sure is that His Worship is empowering the working group, the working party from TCDC, to bring the information so we can understand what we're allowed to even discuss, because WRC haven't approved anything. The pond's not even on the schedule.
We'll deal with that separately if that's okay. And the reason I'm drawing a line under that is because we've got other people that have been waiting for some time. We will deal with that, and the working group is important, but we won't do it in this forum, if that's okay. So.
Yeah, I just hope that we do, because 2019, apparently a working group was set up, a whole lot of recommendations. We've got the records of it, and none of it was put in place.
All right.
I don't want none put in place after this meeting.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the last submitter is Greg, and submitters are Greg and Teresa and Judy.
Anna Van.
Oh, so I've got a different copy. How did that happen? Okay. So Anna, can you hear me?
Through the chair. Yeah. Dean Allen will be speaking to her submission.
Oh, okay. Forgive me if I'm confused. You don't look anything like Anna, and no disrespect, but she's way better looking than you are.
So, that's the line.
Yeah, morning councillors. I've just been asked to speak on behalf of Anna Van Lent of the Permanent Ratepayers and Residents Association to their submission. I've been asked to read it verbatim. I will summarise some of the council votes, and so I'll get straight into it. So first of all, the submission are asked whether they support the mid-price option 2, and they do support that for Page 0. Second of all, they asked if they have any comments on the proposed rates increase, and yes, they do. The proposed district rates increase of 11.4 and medium residential rates increase of 12.9% for Tyro Power LSD, when the livelihoods of so many families and businesses in the Coromandel have already been severely impacted by the recent weather events. For some residents, it may mean they will have to leave the Coromandel altogether, as it's no longer a financially viable option to be a permanent or non-permanent residence. In the survey results, with 716 responses we've shared with TCDC, central government and Waikatahi, you have read about the massive impact the road closure has had on the residents and ratepayers and how it impacts their daily life in many different ways. Businesses may be forced to close or need to let go of staff, which not only affects the businesses but their employees and their families. A massive rates increase may just mean the last straw for many. And the statement below, ensuring our communities have good quality of life, may not be the case for many residents. From the council's vision and outcomes, our council exists to ensure our communities have a good quality of life, both now and in the future. That means we as a local authority not only have to identify what our council needs, we must also demonstrate how we will fulfil those needs. Yes, it means identifying what the ratepayers need as well. The Paranui Ratepayers Executive Committee met on the 13th of March to review the proposed annual plan 23-24. The general consensus of the committee was disappointment and frustration at the level of detail and the timeline to respond to our 700 plus members. Hence the late submission, as the closing date was set for Easter Monday. As Ratepayers and Residents Association, we have an obligation to act on behalf of our memberships, which requires us to provide them detailed, accurate information on where their money is being spent, especially when they could be facing a 13% increase in rates. Paranui has an ageing population who are asset rich with cash poor, and will find this level of increase along with all the others that are happening or in the pipeline will have a major impact on their financial situation. In the TCDC values, the first value stated is financially responsible with ratepayers' money, but when asking for more detailed financial information, TCDC is not providing this. How are ratepayers to know the spending of their money is reasonable? Our question, how much in the 23-24 budget is going towards consultants and more reports being written just to end up in a drawer, naming the annual plan and consultation document rebuild and recover, but what percentage of the proposed rates is actually used to rebuild and recover, and where or how is that being spent? That question has not yet been answered. We do not want to have our ratepayers' money being spent on more consultants, reports, etc. We need action. While we understand the pressure the recent storms have placed on the council, the organisation has an obligation, like us, to provide comprehensive, accurate, detailed budget information, as promised during the recent election campaign, transparency and accountability. We understand the financial restraints the council is under, but this also applies to our ratepayers. This is why we need prudent, fair and equitable funding allocation across the district. When asking ratepayers to defer project and makes sacrifices on top of sacrifices in other aspects of their lives due to the road closure, it also means they deserve to know where that money is being spent. Time for TCDC to keep the promise of transparency and accountability. In terms of the question around, do you have any comments on our updated operational works program in relation to discretionary municipal grants and reducing that budget by 200 grand? Many volunteer groups rely on these grants to help their community, so they're opposed to removing the grants altogether, but do agree with a lower dollar value. On the topic of retained earnings, using the 2.6 million retained earnings, they agree with district retained earnings to be used, but oppose the use of local retained earnings. These are for the specific community board communities to be decided upon what goes towards what. On the question of Pollen Street, we've been informed by TCDC that the Pollen Street businesses have requested the project to be deferred in order not to lose more business. We support this deferral. In relation to the updated capital works program on district funding projects, they agree that only essential infrastructure should be done and all must now be put on hold. To invest millions in the purchase of really been seems excessive.
That's time, dear Anna, Dean. So, but the contents of Anna's submission is there in the packet. I'm opening for questions. Martin, did you?
I was just going to point out that a previous submitter was reminded that they would run out of time and if there was any particular highlights. But I appreciate the position Dean's in as well, so I'm not having a go at Dean. Well done, Dean.
The only thing I would say through the chair is there is quite a bit of detail around the locally funded projects. Yeah. If you can take the time to read and to their views on what's in there.
I've got a point of clarification too. The Paranui ratepayers don't want to see Pleasant Point boat ramp have fees on it. Whereas you'll notice it came through the Tora one that they would like to have it. So just to note that they do not want it. Pleasant Point boat ramp is in Paranui.
Is that in their submission?
Sorry?
Is that in their submission?
That's what Anna was just.
Well, then that's great.
That should be reminded. Well, she just talks about the harbour here, harbour funding only for Billy Point. Okay, so just clarify that point. They are against fees going on Pleasant Point.
I think it's fair that a point be clarified. I'm comfortable with that. It's part of the information. Thank you. So, in the inability
Thank you, Dean.
to throw questions to Dean, I think.
Get 101. Well done.
All right. Thank you. Greg and Teresa, I'm sorry I'm helping up.
Pictures.
Debbie.
Debbie.
Debbie online?
Oh, no.
No, Debbie.
Yeah, this is Debbie. We can tell
I'll stop talking.
Who's going to look at that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Morning, elected members, staff. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. To that note. I'm Greg Hampton and this is Debbie McLaren from the Tauranga River Trail Advocacy Group. The first thing I want to say is that we appreciate that these are really difficult financial times after the cyclone. So we appreciate the difficulties you've got with packages. Can we put this to full screen?
Yeah, done.
That's it. Great. Awesome. So we'll get straight to the point. Why would you consider this submission? Thank you. So the first reason we think you should consider this submission at this time is that there are ongoing near-miss accidents on the road between Boomshead and the popular Swing Bridge Pool. Swing Bridge Pool is the most popular swimming place in Thames, more popular than the Thames swimming pool. This is an urgent issue that Carolina Trail can address. There are over 40 resident properties between Burgess Ave and the swimming hole. There are no footpaths, no school bus, regular viewing business, and this is basically a level of service issue for that affected community. These are just some examples that Debbie has taken in the last couple of weeks of people on the road. And then the second submission, part of it, or second reason why we think you should consider this submission is the Economic Development Recovery Project. Think of it as that. The vision of the standard Carolina River Trail concept is to develop a nationally significant tourism attraction, a walk and cycle trail connecting Thames and the Harrogate Rail Trail to the Dock, Tauranga Business Centre and the Safe Forest Park. So why fund this in 23-25? Why not wait for the 10-year plan? Well, health and safety, that's a no-brainer. As far as the River Trail project goes, a business case will identify the cost benefits of the trail and the extent to which it can support our ongoing economic recovery. As a multi-year project, it confirms that it needs to be ready for consultation and consideration of funding from the LTP 1 year away. A proven trail concept could be considered for inclusion in the Harrogate Rail Trail 10-year plan, and Diane Drummond has confirmed that, the General Manager of the HRT. And the project would be considered shovel ready for external funding applications such as NB Trust Waikato. Talking with Diane, she said it's a pity you haven't got this ready now. So really this is about getting it ready. This is the original trail concept starting from Booms. Okay, so starting from Booms Ave, it was originally intended to go up to Rennie's Ford, across the river, and come back and down the Matamarashi side. In discussion with Hedley Dryden, Destination Coromandel, and Diane Drummond Harrogate Rail Trail, they supported the idea of a bigger concept, and that's what we're proposing here today at Carolina River Trail. So you can see the trail starting from the bottom there, Harrogate Rail Trail in yellow there. The trail would move up the valley. I hope you can see that dotted line moving up the valley. And I wish this would speed up. So it sort of virtually starts there. It will go along to that swim bridge swimming pool, which will pop up on Amama. And then it can go back down Maramaradi Road. So that loop is still possible, but it can continue up the Tauranga Valley to Christian Camp. More swimming holes. Pakalaka Farm. Ipswich Farm, and of course the Dog Visitor Centre. And if it keeps on going up, you end up all the Hoffman's pools and eventually campsites and eventually pinnacles. So how do cycle trails add to local economies? The ending evaluation of the New Zealand cycle trail network over a 12-month period, 2.19 million trips. I'm going to jump a couple of things here. 27% of the New Zealand adult population participated in cycle tourism activities in 1 year period. Cycle trail users brought an estimated direct economic contribution to regions of more than $950 million. The ideal experience, and this is one of the insights of this, would commonly last half a day. And that's really important because this ticks that box. It can be a half day to 1 day trail. And it has all of those strategic alignments with TCDC plans, but the two that I'll highlight is the spatial plan, with plans to develop subdivisional land in the Tauranga, Maramaraki and Totara valleys. This cycle trail could link those communities as well. Timbers Destination Project, Your Worship, you proposed that to the Hibiscus community. This is our group's response. And the partnership leveraging that is possible. There is a whole heap of existing valley tourism infrastructure. And I won't go through that list, but we'll do that via just images. This could be a cultural trail, a rail trail, the historic New Zealand Kauri Company tramway went all the way up the valley, or all the way down the valley to carry the logs. We will aim to follow that pathway as much as possible. There's a shot of that tramway. It's a river trail that links communities to town, links communities together, Totara, Maramaraki and Tauranga. It's an eco trail. That's Pakaraka Farm, voted or awarded the best organic farm in the country last year. Dock Visitor Centre, education camp up the Coromandel, an education trail. This is the Coromandel Christian camp halfway up the trail. Canyons, look at that. This is stunning. Canyons operates commercially up the valley now. All of these things are in place and can be connected by dots through this trail. A nature trail, a camping trail, multiple campgrounds and stuff. And of course, the pinnacles. This has the potential to be a world-class trail. Our proposed project pathway, if council funding is confirmed in the 23-24 annual plan, the Tauranga River Trail Advocacy Group will then form charitable trust to add resource, liaise with the local community, provide a funding entity to seek external funders, both commercial and philanthropic. The first stage of funding, first tranche, could be for the scoping and feasibility. It could stop there. If it's not feasible, don't carry on. The second tranche of funding is for feasibility. It's proven, develop a business case, included in the 10-year plan consultation, potential inclusion in the Hauraki Rail Trail 10-year plan, funding strategy implemented, DCDC, MB, Trust Waikato, etc. There's our submission, which you have a copy of. Thank you.
Greg, can you skip back one, please? Just looking at the proposed budget for the initial scoping. How much is the proposed?
So we've said 100,000 as a round figure for the entire thing. Those two tranches could be split into for the feasibility and scoping, which will basically prove this is possible. This trail would need to use road reserve, esplanade strips along the river, which there are multiple esplanade strips. The Dexage Heritage Farm at the end of the valley is a heritage farm. They have homestays there. I haven't spoken to them yet. We haven't spoken, but we have spoken to many people, landowners in the community, and there's a very positive response. So I think the trail will be achieved over a combination of road reserve, esplanade strip easements. So that will all be done in that first tranche. Once you have confirmed that that is possible, then you know it's worth taking the next step in the funding to develop a business case. That business case is what you need to apply for any funding. And Diane Drummond, General Manager of the Hauraki Rail Trail, has stated that she is very supportive and could see it included in the Hauraki Rail Trail 10-year plan. If it makes that 10-year plan, that's another requirement for NZCT funding. So it's a step-by-step process.
So that connects with the road, if that goes forward. Terry, you had a question?
Yes, interesting project, and I support the cycling all the way. So two clarifications. One around the access to the farms. Through there, you say you've discussed it with some or not all?
With some.
Okay. And the other around toilets and things. Is there some tourist infrastructure funding required there to sort of put them on the way?
So there's a public toilet at the end of the first stage, the Swinbridge Pool.
Right.
From there, it's not a huge ride. And this is the interesting thing. It's a feature-packed ride. It's 12 kilometres one way from camp. This is not easy. And when you get to Dock Visitor Centre, there are all of that infrastructure. And that's the great thing about it.
Right.
This valley is so set up to have this. And what a cycle trail does is connect all of those dots in the most popular recreation going in the country at the moment. Electric bikes has changed everything. Cycle trails, the demographic of using cycle trails now is unlimited.
Grey-haired people.
Questions?
My colleague, councillors.
I was going to say you had your head up for anybody else. So just talking about the sort of expandedness, because the initial cycle trail assessment, which as a point of clarification is attached to our submission, your submission, nothing to do with you, just to be absolutely clear about conflicts. So that has, the initial cycle trail assessment has been done. your suggestion is sort of taking it a step further.
Absolutely.
So how applicable is that document that we've now already got? And what do we need to do to get up to this level before the rest proceeds? That's what I'm trying to gauge.
It's a good question. In a way, part of it's already done, right?
Yeah.
So this is to take it that next step. The reason that we've gone this way is to attract the national funding. You need something much more significant. But we've actually got something much more significant, hugely significant. So, you know, this will easily rival the Corunna Gorge. And we know how popular and populated that trail is. That has activated Hairoi and Waihi. The Hurricane Rail Trail at this point in time hasn't worked that well for Thames because Kaiawa to Thames is 55 kilometres, and it's quite boring, to be honest. And Thames to Hairoi this is anything but boring, and there are multi-day experiences. It could be a half-day experience, a one-day experience, a week-long adventure.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Martin?
No, I think that's all been covered. I was just concerned there was that the 50K for that, and I'd then hate for that 100K to then be spent where in fact a lot of that,
to repeat that.
50K could just be cut and pasted. Right.
Exactly. And in fact, some of the, I think we've got to be really careful when we price things that we don't set the parameters beyond the practical. I think the parameters were set beyond the practical with that first when they costed that up. They had land purchases, they had shifting of power poles. None of that is actually required. Certainly have to widen the trail, but we need to do this in a very practical way to keep costs manageable. And my suggestion is that the advocacy group, and when we set up the charitable trust, we will have access to professionals that we can get on board to reduce those costs. Be very wary of initial assessments you get that say, you know, millions and millions and millions, because I believe as a community, building this as the community, and the Pawanui Trail is a great example of that. If the Pawanui Trail hadn't been built by the community, it probably never would have been funded.
Thank you. All right, I really appreciate the time and effort on it. It's a very exciting project. I'm sorry that we were limited for time at the end there, but really appreciate it.
Okay, I was going to race it through, but I think we let them.
Thank you. All right, so before the councillors go, thank you. Before the councillors go, I just need to make you aware that please check your emails. There's a couple of things that we need to discuss after lunch, and emails relevant. Please check your emails. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Okay.
Richie, can we adjourn the meeting so that we can break for a lunch?
Yes.
And going to come back at 2.
Back at 2.
So what's happening with your?
Okay, very good.
Destination.
I have to say, I read it.
Thank you. So we'll adjourn the meeting. Okay.